Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another edition of Faith and Finance, our weekly sessions where we create a safe space for us all to fellowship, to flow, and to flourish together in all areas of our lives, not just financially. And today's, we're going to be talking about black tax, vex money, and being able to heal from financial trauma. So, as usual, we want to start the conversation with a quote. And we shared it last week and I think the week before. It's captured my heart and imagination because it says, however, there need be no poor people among you. For in the land that the Lord is giving you to possess as your inheritance, he will richly bless you, right? I am beginning to understand more and more that poverty is actually created as a result of systems that are in place. It's a construct. It's possible for people to live well, to have dignity, for people not to be indebted, for people not to live hand to mouth where they can't afford housing, food, clothing, medical care. The world is possible where everyone has enough that they need. But the thing is, human greed comes into play. Systems that extract, that exploit, that just ensure that so many are subjugated, are oppressed, are historically marginalized and excluded. These systems create poverty. And because this is a system created, it is man-made. There's a quote by Nelson Mandela that talks about it. It's left to us to look at it with systemic lens and see how do we dismantle this system and create a world where equity reigns, where no one is left behind. And that's really what I want us to have at the back of our mind when we go into today's session. So, of course, we begin with a gratitude jar. We're going to talk about black tax and how this kind of fuels that systemic poverty, where people are trying so hard to come out of poverty, whether it's responsibilities or systemic issues, it holds them back. Then we'll talk about vex money. As women, what does this really mean to have vex money? And it's a common phrase I find not just in Africa, but across the Black diaspora, the Caribbean. And then generally, we'll talk about money trauma, how this shows up in our lives, and what are the steps, what are the things we need to do to get to a place of healing and a real transformation. So I'm opening it up with this question. What are you grateful for this week? Who wants to start? Any takers?
My gratitude is very long, but I will make it short.
Okay.
I'm just grateful because the cold that I was able to get out of my system so that I can go back to work as I used to, I'm very, very grateful because the first time I experienced this cold, it took me a month to get out of it. So this time around, I caught it very fast. So I quickly used my medicine because every day the dollar counts. So I'm happy for that.
Yeah, that is such a wonderful share. Thank you, because health is wealth. That's the beginning and end of it all. So thank you, Adiola, for sharing that. Who wants to go next? What are we thankful for? What are we grateful for this past week? Kay? While you're still thinking about it, I'll go next and say for me, I am grateful for health. Health myself, for my mom especially, and for my family and friends. None of all the other things that we do matter if we're not healthy. So I'm really, especially really thankful for health. It's been a really rough week. I am thankful that we're standing here and we're healthy and we're doing the work that we love. Kamsi, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm grateful for having the opportunity to rest during this semester because last week was my reading week. Even though I have midterms this week, I was
Okay.
able to rest and at least study at my own pace.
Oh, great. That is wonderful. Rest is just super, super important. And thanks for that reminder. We should all be resting. Kay, if you're ready to share, please go ahead, or you can put it in the chat.
I would have to say rest. I've been trying to get rest, and I was grateful for the week to end just to get some rest. So that's what I'd have to say.
Great. That's a big one. So you and Kamsi, both of you are reminding us that we should really pay attention to rest. So thanks for that. So black tax, what is it? It has roots in so many things. A lot of people talk about black tax in terms of places like South Africa, where blacks were actually, taxed in the apartheid regime. Some people look at it in terms of enslavement, the extra burden that Black people carried as enslaved people. And then contemporary now, we look at Black tax as that extra, often invisible financial and social, cultural, and economic burden that we carry due to systemic racism, due to being excluded from the dominant economic systems, due to the impact of colonialism in our countries of origin, and due to the capitalist extractive nature where systems take from us some work that requires invisible, often unpaid labor. And then the secondary part of black tax is that you're dealing with all the systemic issues. But if you now happen to rise through the system, maybe you fought really hard, got yourself educated, or started a business, or rose through the ranks in your career, you become maybe the first person in your community or in your family or in your network that has really risen. So that now creates a level of black tax where the people in that community, in your family, in your network, see you as someone who has the resources to support them. You become almost like the Iroko tree, this person that has broken through the glass ceiling, but you're now expected to help others. And in itself, it's not a bad thing that someone has the resources and then they can now help others. But as with all things, when it becomes too much of everything is bad, or too much of everything creates tension or creates stress, when it now gets to the point where you're now that focal point that's helping everyone, often to your own detriment. It could be family members, it could be siblings, it could even be children, it could be relatives, it could be friends. You help them with cost of living, things like rent, like utility, education, immigration costs to start their businesses, to pay for professional courses, different things. In addition to that, there's even the level where you're now paying for lifestyle things. They're not asking the basics like shelter, clothing, school fees, and health, and all of that. There are people that their black tax comes, people in their network asking them for things. They want to go on vacation, they want to go shopping. They resent them when they don't get that help. It doesn't even matter whether you're able to or not, because if you're able to and you have all the resources, there will be no tension. You just help on based on the fact that you have. But for some people, it gets to a point where it becomes detrimental because you're dealing with your own bills, you're dealing with your debt load, and we'll go into debt later on. And your own goals, like you want to save, you want to invest for a rainy day. And then on top of that, there's that layer of all the care, all the people that you also have to provide for. So this black tax, like we said at the beginning, emerges from historical exclusion, from a lot of the safety nets, the wealth building systems and structures that are in place. So on one hand, you didn't get the systemic help. And also maybe you're excluded because maybe your credit score is not good enough. You have to be able to have enough for housing, for food, for all these other things. And yet maybe you're not paid well enough. Like, for instance, Statistics Canada show that Black women get earnings 32 cents less on the dollar compared to other groups. Immigrants, especially Black immigrants, make up majority of the list of low income cutoff. They live below the low income cutoff in Canada. So it's not even about people don't have the skills or the education. Or no, these are people that are educated. So there are all these systemic barriers. So on one hand, you're earning less. If you're even running a business, you're not getting access to enough capital, because Black women and Indigenous women, again, based on a research by Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub on the state of women entrepreneurs, their most recent report, that Black women and Indigenous women who are entrepreneurs and business owners, they get the least access to capital. It's even less than 1% of the overall capital pool. So when you think of all of this, then you now layer on to the responsibilities at the family level, community level. It becomes a real thing. It becomes a source of stress. It even becomes a source of trauma for some people. So what is financial trauma? It comes from different reasons. Black tax could lead to financial trauma. But the definition, when money stress is so intense or is prolonged or even generational, that it becomes tied to deep feelings of fear, anxiety, shame, powerlessness, and then it affects our behavior. It affects our overall well-being, how we sleep, how we interact with other people, how we interact with the world, how we do our work, how we run our businesses. Trauma is deeply ingrained because it affects your well-being. In fact, there are cases where financial trauma has led to people unaliving themselves. You just can't cope with either the demands or the debt load or just the feelings that of shame and helplessness that it evokes. So financial trauma is a real thing in our community because we talked about the historical exclusions that have happened, the marginalizations that have happened. So sometimes our relationship with money is based on things that we learned from people modeling when we were growing up, either at the home front, parents, or even the communities that we come from, or the countries that we come from. A lot of this gets embedded unconsciously. And so when we start having conversations about money, we actually feel the distress physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, mentally. And then instead of being able to address money issues as they come up, we begin to act in ways that avoid those things because it leads us to panic. There's anxiety, panic, and emotional spending. And then it's double jeopardy where you're now reinforcing self-sabotaging behaviors. I have this bill to pay. I don't have enough to cover it. Instead of saying, let me pay part of it, you actually take that money and you go shopping because you want that initial dopamine. Like you just want to feel good instead of sitting with whatever feelings, whether it's anxiety, shame, fear, powerlessness, whatever that thing is. So financial trauma can be so deep that sometimes people actually have to need to go for therapy to be able to untangle it. Because you get people that say, oh, I'm earning so much, I don't know, but I'm still not able to take care of all my bills. I just spend without thinking. That's emotional spending. Or people ask me for stuff and I just keep saying yes, 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 yes. Even when I should say no, just to be able to at least be financially resilient and have financial well-being and wellness. You know that saying when you're in an aircraft that you have to put on the oxygen mask first before you put on, even for your child. Trauma shows up where we're not taking care of ourselves. We're actually self-sabotaging, and then we're trying to take care of everyone else first. We're not filling up our well because there's something that we haven't addressed on an unconscious level. And there are different roots, there are different reasons that can cause financial trauma. Eviction, like the crisis we're having now around homelessness, housing insecurity, job loss, a sudden job loss that you didn't prepare for. Even if you have the emergency funds, that can still be an issue. A business nose diving, like something could happen in your business. Maybe you lost money through the business, or the sales were not as good based on your forecast, and maybe you've amassed so much in expenses. That gap creates a form of trauma, right? Sometimes people get defrauded and it causes trauma. Food insecurity causes trauma, because the thing with food insecurity, especially if you have children, if you have a family, that you're not able to provide for them, that causes another layer of anxiety and of trauma. And the thing with financial trauma is that it rewires our brain circuitry. We become hyper vigilant. You become so careful. You're anxious most of the time. Things around financial abuse, which is a huge form of abuse that no one talks about. In fact, there's a whole session we do around financial abuse. This March, because it's International Women's Month, we're going to be talking about that. Signs of financial abuse and how to heal from it, and also signs to look out for so you don't fall into that trap. And financial abuse can come from a significant other, from a partner, a spouse. It can come from even your children. It can come from parents. It can come from friends. It can come from your bosses at work or your place of work. So it comes in different ways. And then there's the financial abuse that's also self-inflicted. We talk about all of that in March. There's discrimination at work, discrimination in the financial services system, and intergenerational poverty can also cause financial trauma. So when you have financial trauma, there are certain things to look out for. Are you avoiding talking about money? Are you avoiding things to pay off? That you're avoiding even calling maybe your creditors, your credit card companies, your banks, clients that we have, and they say, oh, I don't even look at it anymore because it's giving them so much trauma that they can't face it. And so they need external help to be able to come in and begin to untangle all of that. Anxiety when you're checking your accounts, anxiety when you're looking at your bills, anxiety even when you're spending, when you're even paying for basics like food and medicine. Some people get panic attacks when they have financial trauma. Once they spend, like immediately their whole system gets into that fight, flight, a visual reaction that they have to spending money. So what is the impact of all of this on Black women? The emotional weight on Black women. Often we are the cultural safety nets for our communities, for our families, for our network of friends, even in our workplaces. We're often so willing to help, to care for other people, and we put ourselves last. There's this whole thing around the strong Black woman. I actually do not like that phrase anymore. I always tell people now, like, I'm soft. I'm a soft baby girl. I'm not a strong Black woman. Why? Because that whole thing, that persona of a strong Black woman, initially it started as a positive thing. Oh, we're resilient. We can pull through. We can power through. We can do all of that. But it leaves us powerless. You're strong because you're doing emotional labor, financial labor, often unpaid labor for others, but no one is taking care of you. No one is filling back into your cup. And so you're not seen as vulnerable. You're not seen as soft. You're not seen as deserving of being taken care of. It's this thing of this person will be fine. What happens with that is that when you're now struggling, often there's no one to turn to, because people are not expecting you to even ask for help. And sometimes you might box yourself into this corner where you've now assumed that persona. And you're struggling, but you feel ashamed. You feel a sense of stigma. You even feel guilty to ask for help. And then you don't have the trusted networks that you can feel safe with, to be vulnerable, to be human, to say, hey, I'm struggling with this XYZ. There's guilt when you say no. You see how we're talking about black tax and family members and friends and community asking for help. Maybe you're doing well in your job or you were doing well before, but things may have changed. But those people that are still asking are still expecting a yes. And you don't have boundaries around saying yes or no. You're not able to communicate what those boundaries are because you're conditioned. And it's not even a finger pointing. It's not saying you had fault. It's just that it's the conditioning, the social conditioning that you've assumed a persona that is now causing you harm. And so how to get out of that is actually to sit with boundaries, to begin to understand that boundaries protect both you and other people around you. Boundaries are where you actually show self-love to yourself, where you say, hey, I'm worthy of being cared for. I'm worthy of honoring my own values. I'm also worthy of even honoring my bandwidth, what I can do or cannot do. Because the moment you're giving more than you have to give, you're robbing something or someone. And often we're robbing our future selves and our present self. We're robbing our sense of health and wellness. We're robbing our peace of mind. We're robbing our sense of security just to be able to get that temporary satisfaction of, I said yes to this person. I don't want this person to feel like I'm not doing enough or I'm not helping out. But the truth is, if you don't have the bandwidth for it, you shouldn't be saying yes. And so boundaries come in to teach us how to communicate who we are, what is important to us, to other people around us. Boundary is not a wall that separates. Is not a fence that keeps people out. Boundaries is actually an invitation to let in those that are willing to honor who you are, those that are willing to honor your well-being, those that actually have you in mind. So your boundaries is you telling yourself and the world, hey, I'm important. Hey, I'm worthy. Hey, I'm deserving of peace of mind, of being able to help others on my own terms, of growing and being available or not available in ways that serve my highest intentions. So when we create boundaries, they allow us to practice real self-care. And when we create financial boundaries, we're able to work for today and let our earnings, part of that earnings, do the work for our future selves. Because with financial boundaries, you're able to save better. You're able to invest better. You're able to contribute to community better. You're able to prioritize your goals and dreams better. So boundaries are a way for us, especially us Black women, to be able to care for ourselves. So when we put our own rest, our health, our long-term goals last, we're not practicing boundaries. We're not practicing self-love. In fact, that is internalized self-abdication. When you give up on yourself at an unconscious level. It's like someone saying, hey, I really care about myself, my dream, and then, but you know what? I'm not going to eat right. I'm not going to exercise. I'm not going to rest. I'm just going to keep plowing on and on and on. That's not self-love. That's a conditioning, because what you're doing, you're showing that your life, longevity, wellness, it's not important. Because if it were important, you have to pause to say, hey, wait a minute. We need to be discerning and always question ourselves. Why am I giving? Am I giving because I want to be a nice people pleaser? Or am I giving because I genuinely care? And if it's out of a place of caring, we're going to also be free to say no. It's not just saying yes, yes, yes. Because when you're saying yes, yes, yes to your own detriment, that's actually manipulating. You're manipulating people to like you. And you're lying to yourself. So it's important for us to see that if we are operating in systems of inequality, that it is left to us to steward the resources that we have. If not, we're going to give to the point that it's just detrimental to us. There are so many things that could happen that if we don't prepare for and we're not practicing financial boundaries, we will not have what we call vex money. What is vex money? Vex money is being able to create financial resilience through saving a set amount aside for when life happens. We say when shit happens. Death, disease, displacement, divorce, downsizing, debt, disaster, flood, fire, all of that. Drug, the cost of medication, or even spiraling into addiction, depression, dissonance where we're disconnected. Any of these things could happen at any time. Let's even talk about vex money in the context of something as simple as even going out on a date. We love using this example because it's happened to so many women. You go out on a date and maybe your date starts acting in creepy ways. You just don't feel safe and you can't walk away from that situation because maybe they picked you up and you don't even have money for a cab to get home. You're literally stuck. Vex money is literally money that can save you from unpleasant situations. Some people call it FU money. Some people call it freedom money. It's called different things. In the Caribbean, and I know in parts of Africa and a lot of Black communities in diaspora, it's called vex money. It's literally money that you put aside that can save you from unpleasant things in life. Bad boss, if you have vex money, you can say, you know what, I'm not doing this job. I'm quitting. I have this pool of money somewhere that's going to be like a cushion while I figure out what I'm going to do. Bad relationship, abusive, you have your vex money. You know, hey, I have this pool of money that offers me resilience, financial resilience, to be able to bounce back, whether it's a divorce, whether it's an abusive relationship I want to flee from. Like just different things that could happen. You create your safety net. You don't hand that over to someone else. Vex money is beyond emergency funds. It's a lot more than that. And if you don't have vex money, at least have a network of people that you can call at any given time when you're threatened or life happens in a way that you need to save yourself. Because if you don't, what then tends to happen is that these situations arise and then there's no way for us to come out of it. One of the things here that we always highlight, debt, because debt is a fact of life here in North America. There's hardly anyone that you tap and they'll tell you, oh, I'm totally debt free. People like that exist, but it's the minority. Majority, we're dealing with debt loads, often that are not manageable, that are causing havoc on our health, that we seem to be paying it up, but we're literally just servicing the interest and the principal keeps compounding. And there are many reasons for this. Again, we go back to the systemic reasons where the system is designed to function exactly how it's functioning. People get credit cards as young as 18 without them understanding what a credit card means, does, how the interest is calculated, the impact when they pay at a certain time or don't pay, how long it would take them if they were just paying the minimum payment. So there's so many things that are shrouded in opacity. That means the system is not as transparent and is left to us to find out the answers. So imagine dealing with debt, especially like student loan, credit card debt, private loan debt, and then you're now dealing with black tax. For those of us that have family back home from our home country, you might have relatives that are dependent on you. They don't know the reality you're living. So when they're asking, the tendency for here is just to keep giving. But it gets to a point that there's collision. Either all of a sudden you don't have any more, and then they now resent you for no longer, because no boundaries have been communicated. In all the surveys we've done, in all the research that we've been part of, debt is actually one of the biggest detrimental factor to people's health, to people's overall financial wellness and well-being. Because a lot of people are paying so much in interest that if they were debt-free, the monies they were paying in interest were put in an investment account that's yielding even a conservative return, their overall life will change. Their financial well-being, their financial health, their everything will drastically change. So when we talk about debt, we talk about good debt and bad debt. Does anyone know the difference between a good debt and bad debt? Anyone wants to share? Kamsi, anyone?
I can go.
Okay, go
A
ahead.
good debt can be, for example, a mortgage that you've planned for, and bad debt is an overdrafted credit card.
Where you're not paying. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. That's it. A good debt actually helps you in building assets. At the end of that good debt, so a business loan, yes, a business loan, Blessing, is an example of a good debt because it's helping you build asset. You're actually using it towards something that's going to generate more income or give you more equity, like in a mortgage. A business loan, you're putting it in your business. If you use it well, it will grow that business and you pay off the debt and even make a profit. So a good debt adds to us. So it's important we understand how to use debt then. Because a credit card, to your point, Kamsi, a credit card will only fall under bad debt when it's overutilized it and you're not paying it off. So that now you're paying late fees, you're paying over limit fee, you're paying continuously. If that credit card, you were using it towards your business in such a way that whatever interest you're paying on the credit card, you're generating so much more from the interest. That's a net positive. Then it becomes a good debt. But if you're just paying off and then there's a balance that's there, that's constantly there, that the interest keep piling on, and all of a sudden you realize that the interest is now so much more than whatever you're earning, whether in your business or all of that, then it's a bad debt. Because the only role of a bad debt is to put us further in debt. It has no positive value. It can give you a temporary thrill, but overall, the damage it causes is more than the positive. So when we want to talk about addressing black tax, how do we create vex money? How do we address debt loads that are crippling us from really enjoying the fullness of our life? The first place we always say to start is with a financial audit. Because you cannot fix something that you haven't acknowledged. We cannot fix something that we're not fully aware of. We cannot fix something that we're in denial about. A personal financial audit is exactly as it says. We have a sheet for it. For those that are interested, we can send it to you. You fill out every single thing. What you're earning, what you're spending on, like every line item, your subscriptions, your everything, whatever it is, it's going to go on that financial audit. And the easiest way to do it is just print out all your bank statements, print out all your credit card statement, and if you ever withdraw cash, right, journal and note, always track what you're spending it on, because a financial audit is a comprehensive picture of your spending, your earning, your saving, your investing, and your giving. You want to know where your money is going. If you don't know where your money is going, you cannot plug any leaks. If you don't know where your money is going, you cannot even track it enough to now earn more so that you're always in the positive. Like when you pay off everything where it's going, you still have something left. And this lack of financial awareness that also creates the paycheck to paycheck. There are systemic issues, like we said from the beginning, that cause this at a fundamental level. And then there's the second level of behavioral issues. Once we know what the picture is like, that's where we now create a debt freedom plan. A debt freedom plan is being able to look at all your debts, categorize them, right? Know which one you're looking at as long-term, short-term, immediate. And then you decide on the approach you're going to use to pay them off. Once you start creating this plan, it's almost like a magnetic thing. You're going to start getting resources. You're going to start seeing trainings on value system. This is the behavior, how to invest, how to save. You're going to start seeing opportunity to even create additional income. Why? Because you're now focused. You've now acknowledged at an unconscious level, this is a problem that I want to solve. And with all of us as human beings, once we focus, it's something that's physiological and is also psychological. Once we focus on anything, there's a part of our body called the RAS, reticular activation system. Once you really focus on something and zero in on it, it's like you drown the noise all around. And then all of a sudden, the brain is just feeding you all these different information of opportunities. Hey, look here. Oh, look there. It's like that saying when they say, if someone tells you, hey, think of a red car. Once you start thinking of that red car, when you step out of the door, you're going to notice all the red cars. They were there before, but because you were not thinking of them, you didn't really notice how many. But once you focus, once we zero in with awareness of our financial reality, we begin to look out for, oh, maybe I need to speak to a coach. Oh, maybe I should attend this faith and finance. Oh, maybe I should do this. Oh, maybe I should join a group that are saving to clear up debt. Maybe I should get an extra job. Maybe, oh, this business line, you know what, I'm going to add something extra. You start experimenting with different ideas. You don't even have time to focus on other things. They become distractions. And then you zero in. Then all of a sudden, you're now working your plan. Because it's one thing to create a plan, it's another thing to actually implement a plan with consistency. And we always talk about insurance, even though, you know, it gets a bad rap because sometimes people pay all that premium and in the end they get nothing. But in this system that we're living in, that is a very formalized credit-based system, insurance offers us a means of mitigating risks and costs, right? For instance, if you're running a business and you have a liability insurance and something happens, at least you have a place of recourse. If you have health crisis and you have insurance, maybe your health crisis leads to a disability that you now have to take time off work. A disability insurance can step in. This XYZ could happen to me. If this XYZ happened to me, what will happen to my children? That's why we always tell people, once you have children, insurance is a love language. It allows you to prepare for anything that could happen to you, whether it's a critical illness like heart attacks and cancer. And often when we do this, people are like, oh no, that will never happen to me. You know, the typical African or Black expression, God forbid. No, I reject that. But the thing is, the reality, the numbers all around us show us that these things are real. So it's like saying, oh, I'm never going to have an accident, so I'll not get car insurance. Nobody goes out thinking they're going to have an accident. But what if someone hits you? You'll be able to have some relief while you're recuperating, or it will cover some of the costs. And when we talk about debt, we also talk about community-based approaches that we've seen that work. There was one of the groups that we had set up with Iranian women, and what they did was they came together and they did a collective susu for one of their members that had just come into the country and, you know, was dealing with a lot of housing insecurity and debt. And this person, because they didn't understand the system, became vulnerable to a lot of predatory loans. And so this group, community member, came together, did that susu community for a full year to get this person out of it. That's a community-based approach. And sometimes We are so insulated, and because of the trauma of money, intergenerational and contemporary, we are not comfortable enough to talk about things like that as a community. But what happens if someone now dies? Then you see community rallying round and contributing and doing this, and they're doing that maybe just to help with the funeral cost and all, but that person is already gone. So what we're saying is we want to decolonize this approach of looking at money and debt as something that we should shy away from, rather to make it something that's very open and transparent, that we talk about and co-create community-based approaches, whether it's in the financial literacy, financial liberation courses and programs, whether it's in practical things like creating investment clubs, saving clubs that people are able to draw from. I'll give an example. There was a member of our co-op that had loans outstanding, like over 14,000 thereabout. She was able to get another member of the cooperative that lent that money to her, and that person spread it out across 12 months. So she got the immediate capital. Why? Because this had been a member that has been consistent in her membership, showing up, doing all the classes, all her SUSU group, she pays on time, all the loans she had taken. So she had the records that gave her a high score. So this other member was like, hey, if this person is going to qualify for this higher amount of loan, and this is what is holding them, I am willing to step in because someone in the past had done something similar for me. And so what happened? She got that amount, cleared the credit cards, and once she did that, her utilization became close to zero. So she got her utilization low. Her score went up over a 2-month period. She went back to reapply, got money for her business, and now is paying off that other member. Of course, she said, oh, this is how much I can pay. This is the token of appreciation I can add on it. She was able to combine different approaches. First of all, she listed those in terms of highest to smallest based on the interest that she was paying. And when she did the calculation, she saw how much she would save in interest if she now got this peer-to-peer loan and paid a lower amount as a token of appreciation. So when we're talking about debt and clearing out debt, there are several approaches that we can use. You can do it in terms of the amount. You start with a small amount and you work your way up. If you want that instant gratification, you need that encouragement to keep going. That's the debt snowball method, right? You just list the debt in terms of the numbers and then you start going from the smallest. But each month you're going to pay the minimum amount on all of them. But that small one, the smallest, you pay more to it so that you clear it and you go to the next one. The debt avalanche method, that one is different. It's really a mathematical model because it looks at the actual interest that you're paying. So if you're paying 30% interest here, 20% here, this credit card, 25%. So you're going to arrange them based on the interest rate because you want to save money. And sometimes, whether it's the debt snowball method or the debt avalanche method, you can actually get a consolidation where they now put everything into one payment and they reduce maybe the percentage that you have to pay overall. Some people are able to negotiate where all their debt, they bring it together and then they're now paying 75% of it or 50% of it. So there's a credit counseling program through the government of Canada. We've reached out to them to be able to be certified to offer this also to our members. We found that that is what keeps a lot of people in our community away from investing because they are paying so much in interest. Just because of time, we're going to pause here. So I wanted to open it up for everyone to just share your thoughts. Were there things that we shared today that was of value to you? Is there anything you're going to apply in your life? We want to hear from you. Share your comments, questions.